everyone. I'm Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional and small business coach. Welcome to Financial Therapy for the Week. I am so excited to have you here. We have a great episode for you guys today. Today we are following up with another deep dive into one of the four horsemen of personal finance. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back, listen to the episode on the four horsemen of personal finance. And then you might want to start this four-part series with our episode on obligation. So we just did an episode, a deep dive on obligation, and this episode we are going into the fear and denial of it all. So again, I earlier on in the show, there's an episode about the four horsemen of personal finance. Those are obligation, fear, denial, guilt, shame, and pride. And fear and denial go together. Guilt and shame tend to go together. So this episode is all about fear and denial because really so much of our decision making is driven by this horseman. And it can be really debilitating. It can lead to us either not earning what we could potentially, or losing money, expending money that we really don't need to. And you know, we have an episode on money dysmorphia. If you haven't listened to that, I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to that too. This struggle is real, you guys. This whole podcast, the whole premise of the podcast is to get real people talking about how we can be more secure and confident in our financial decision making. And, you know, the crux of that is that many of us are not secure and confident in our financial decision making. You're not alone in that sentiment. It is fascinating to me whether you're making, $250,000 versus whether you're making $25,000 as an adult. You probably have very similar anxieties, very similar fears about money, earning enough, how much you spend, what you spend it on, if you're making the right decisions, if you're ever going to have enough. All of that is just very, very common across income levels. And you know, I've been a financial coach for almost 15 years, and so many folks, I can't tell you, across the financial spectrum have so many of the similar concerns that's why this podcast exists. And I will tell you, so many of the decisions that people make or don't make, choose not to make, and that's where the denial comes in, is based on fear of an outcome or a result or of missing out on something. It's very interesting. And, I think can be mitigated with a little bit of actively and intentionally looking at our personal finances, talking about them, understanding that people are in the same boat as you are. So today's episode is 3 questions to spot check your feelings of fear and denial when you are making financial decisions. And so let's define fear and denial. Fear is an unpleasant and often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. Danger is coming. Flight is like the, fight or flight. This is the flight sort of feeling. It evokes scarcity mindset, ongoing financial insecurity, confusion. Denial is a defense mechanism where someone avoids a difficult truth by just denying its existence. And we use this very often in personal finance when we just don't look, when we just avoid knowing what is actually true when we see it in numbers on actual paper or, these days a screen. when we avoid it, we can continue doing exactly what we always want to be doing, which is exactly what makes us nice and comfortable. And so avoidance is really the killer of a lot of opportunity, because if you don't actually see where the problems are, where the gaps are, if you're so afraid to actually take a look, make a budget, explore how you could earn more or how you could spend less, or what you're spending on, shifting your priorities, making sure you know your priorities, understanding your values, understanding yourself as a financial being, so to speak. As long as you avoid those things, or you're scared to dig into those things, it really just keeps us stuck. And so ironically, our flight mentality keeps us standing exactly still, often going backwards, because most of the time, if you're not growing, if you're not actually intentionally growing, you're actually really going backwards. And that's certainly the way money works. If you put some money in a bank account with a 0.02% interest rate, you're actually just losing money. So let's be very clear. If you are not actively engaged in your financial life, you're losing. And it's really important for people to understand that financial literacy and information is the key to unlocking being confident and not as fearful about your finances. So let's get out of denial. Let's talk a little bit about how to do so. So where does this come from? Sometimes we have an anchoring bias that keeps us firmly in place, as I mentioned. Sometimes it's about regret aversion. We do not want to feel like we've made a mistake. We do not want to feel like we engendered some horrible consequence based on our movement forward unintentionally into a pit of disaster financially. And then also sometimes we don't want to stop investing in something that's really a sunk cost. Sometimes, I mean, and this is the classic, money pit house type of situation where you move in and you are feeling like, just another $10,000, just another something, or you have a car that's it's been around for forever and it's just a $500 maintenance that happened this time, but then, a month later you're back in the shop for something else. That sunk cost bias, that fear of moving on, that denial that something is really wrong is really paralyzing, or it can be really paralyzing for us. So 3 common questions to spot check your feelings of fear and denial the first one would be, is this in my budget? This is just such a great question, and I'm going to keep saying it because I'm going to keep stressing how important a budget actually is. Again, budgets are boundaries. If you haven't listened to that episode, check it out, because 4 hard truths for why you don't have a budget will help you, I think, hopefully create a budget, will help you get inspired, or really just like, I can do this, about building a budget and having something that's a guidepost for your financial life. So budgets are boundaries. And if you have something in your budget, you won't feel badly for spending or earning whatever it is that you're planned to. Even if you come up short, it won't create the same level of feelings of fear or anxiety around whatever's happening as if you don't have a goalpost or a goal in the first place. And so put it in your budget, whatever it is that you're trying to do, and unless you're in a state of denial and haven't made a budget at all, you will then be more confident and less fearful about how you're earning or how you're spending your money on your priorities. Now, if you're in a position where you literally, don't have a job, I understand not building a budget and then being like, cool, this alleviated all my fear around my finances. That's not going to happen. I'm not like, fairy godmother, like golden shimmery glitter here. So I'm not sugarcoating this idea of fear around finances. And I want to say that especially in this day and age and at this moment in time, because things are really, really bad for a lot of people. I was reading an article actually earlier today talking about how 6 figures is not 6 figures anymore. 6 figures today needs to be $170,000 to buy what it would buy in 2005. I can't remember the source of this, but if you Google it, I'm sure you could find it. And that is wild to me. That 70% increase in inflation over the course, essentially wage inflation over the course of 20 years is monumental. And so when you think about why you're struggling or why things feel like they should be better, keep that in mind. Because if you think 6 figures, $100,000 is a lot of money, apparently for a family of 3, that is just getting by. So, if you have a budget and you are confident about how your budget is working out, then you won't be in fear of spending or figuring out how to earn more dollars in order to make that work. And I know that it was just such a downer about the earnings side of things, but I think that is a sign of the times, guys. There is really no way that I can tell to earn enough to have the lifestyle that we all envision as a middle class lifestyle unless you are extremely strategic about it. You don't stumble into that anymore in America. And I hate to say that, but I mean, we have a massive amount of debt in this country. And right now we're going through some really, really hard economic times with inflation on consumer goods being the highest in a very long time. And at the same time, a lot of the supports are being removed. And so it's kind of a 1-2 punch for a lot of folks right now. And so it may feel like it's hopeless to make a budget. It may feel like it doesn't make sense to budget when you don't have any money. And I've heard that many a time. I promise you, it still helps. It still helps to see what you need to see. Do not allow yourself to be in denial. It just exacerbates the fear. And so we have to be brave. And courage is not being scared, right? It's doing the thing even though you're scared to do it. And so let's all gather up the courage to look at what we don't want to look at as far as making a budget and seeing where things are breaking down. Seeing what is disproportionately taking your dollars and what priorities might need to shift in order to really honor the values that you have as best that you can. So that was the first question, is this in my budget? The second question is, what am I afraid to lose? What am I afraid to lose when I am feeling these feelings of fear and or denial? And with denial, what you're afraid to lose is the ability to not act. Because honestly, if you put something in a budget or you know you have to spend money on something, or you know you need to earn more or get another job or go back to school or something like that, denial is a really great coping mechanism so that you don't lose your ability to not do anything. And, you know, it's really easy to not do anything. It's really hard to confront your financial reality and to change what you're doing in a realistic way, a pragmatic way, in order to move your trajectory in a new direction. It's hard to do that. And so I get it, but I also challenge you guys to do it. And I think that it's within everyone's capabilities and power to do it. I think sometimes we have to be told that we are the ones we've been waiting for when it comes to identifying what it is that we're so afraid of. Most of us are very risk averse, and you're going to be that way about something you're unfamiliar with. So if you are dealing with personal finance and you don't know what you're dealing with, you're just going to be like, okay, I'm scared of that. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not even going to look at what is going on. I don't want to lose either something tangible, like, you know that you really shouldn't have the car that you have and that you should sell it, or that you should downgrade your house, your apartment, or something like that, but you don't want to do it. So there's that tangible aspect. But then there's also, like, if you see the gaps, then yeah, you got to do something about it. So what are you afraid to lose? You might be risk averse, or you might just be in some sort of denial about something that you are unfamiliar with. But you should get familiar with one or two aspects of something that you are fearful of, and that will help. So if you were in an apartment that you thought maybe might be overpriced, or you just see on your budget that you are spending an extraordinary amount on rent, like, okay, I'm spending 40%, 50% of my income on rent. How can I reduce that in order to kind of try and right-size my budget? So you've done that work. Get familiar with the market. Get familiar with what apartments are going for. I know this sounds really simple, but you would be surprised how many people will stall out on doing the work to save themselves potentially hundreds, thousands of dollars, because they're kind of in denial about it, or they're fearful to actually look and see, is it what I think it is? Because if it's what I think it is, I can't manage it. But what if it's not what you think it is? Or what if it is what you think it is, and there is a way to help yourself out of it? What if that way needs to happen, like, immediately? What if that way could take a while and you could just relax for a little bit? So, like, knowing what you're dealing with is super important. Knowing what internally you're afraid of losing. Asking yourself that question can help bring up some of the things that you are afraid to lose out on, or to just lose tangibly as a benefit of staying in denial. So the third question you should ask yourself to spot check your feelings of fear and denial is my fear coming from an external source? So very simply, if you're not doing or doing something, so if you're doing or not doing something because you fear the outcome and something, or you fear the missing out on an outcome, and something external is making you feel that way, you should know that the worst outcomes often happen when we act emotionally. And really when we react emotionally with personal finance. So is my fear coming from an external source? Because it's almost never a good idea to listen to outside forces and immediately react when it comes to finances. You should have a plan, and that plan, I promise you, should not really change significantly without an equally significant life event or change for you. So if you've put a budget in place, if you've put an investment plan in place, if you have a tax strategy, if you have an estate plan or a will, if you have a trust that you've built out, these are big. Even if the financial decision is something like buying a car, buying a house, paying for your child's school, going back to school, dropping out of school. If you're making any of these decisions, the fear that drives that decision making, if there is fear that drives that decision making, should not be coming from an external source and then just be acted upon. I would say definitely be making some sort of a pros and cons list. Definitely be consulting with your financial partner, maybe a trusted financial advisor, preferably a fiduciary. If you are making financial decisions based on fear of something, and especially if that fear is coming from an external source, you should question that. Personal finance is personal. So unless a change significantly happens, like having a baby, getting married, you're moving, you should not probably change fundamentally what you have financial responsibility for. And you should not let fear drive you into doing so. It's not a fingers to the wind type situation with personal finance. You're not going to be missing out, or you're not going to be losing everything because of something that you have thought about, considered, and planned for that's in your plan. So if something external is making you feel that way, and that includes a stock market drop, that includes somebody in your family having some sort of personal emergency themselves, that includes all of those kind of like things that make things feel like an obligation, and we have a fear response to them. We feel like we need to react, we need to respond, we need to run towards, we need to do something. If that fear is coming from an external source, you just want to take a breath. And I would say, unless it's an obvious situation where you obviously should or obviously should not act, then just relax, make a pros and cons list, because there's almost no situation that's not an emergency, and an emergency is not a stock market drop. There's almost no situation that you should immediately react financially to, contrary to something that is in your budget. So, all right, so this has been 3 questions to spot check your feelings of fear or denial. The first question is, predictably, is this in my budget? The second question is, what am I afraid to lose? Whether that's a tangible something, or whether that is the loss of control and the ability to kind of not do anything, the loss of your ability to deny the situation. And the third question to ask yourself to spot check your feelings of fear or denial is my fear coming from an external source? You should never allow anyone to pressure you into doing or not doing something, eliciting feelings of fear around finances. The threat of losing or not making enough money or something like that, that level of extortion, basically, in any sort of fashion is not appropriate in the financial world. So if you're feeling fear being generated from an external source, maybe check that, because there really should be no situation where you're feeling like a lot of pressure to to do something, and if you are feeling a lot of pressure to do something, then reacting emotionally, I can guarantee you, is not the right solution. Personal finance is personal. And so whatever everyone else is doing, that idea that, oh my gosh, I should be doing something, or I shouldn't be doing something, or something horrible is going to happen, some sort of outcome is going to occur, or I won't be able to afford something, or I can't give up on spending this money on this. All of that coming from external sources and not from you and your values and what your priorities are should all be examined, especially before you make any financial decisions. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, I will be back next week with another episode of Financial Therapy. Thanks so much for listening in. And if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next week.